What is up, everybody? My name is ericholic8704, and I'm here to give you yet another Raw review. This time we're doing Raw, June 16th, 2003, emanating from Dallas, Texas. This was the post-Bad Blood 2003 show. For those of you who are not aware of this, even though I've mentioned it several times, Bad Blood 2003 was the first brand-exclusive pay-per-view. It was the first Raw exclusive pay-per-view. And overall, if you guys haven't seen the show, it's not something I would recommend checking out. The show honestly isn't even all that great. But I was curious because the pay per view wasn't all that great, but I wondered if the fallout would be, because there does seem to be that trend where, like, if they have a bad pay per view or a bad big show, the post show, the show after it, seems to kind of pick up. And that really didn't happen here. So we're going to go this through segment by segment, match by match. But, let's dive right in. Opening segment, we had Mick Foley coming out for a promo. Foley comes out with a copy of his book. JR notes how Foley called everything right down the middle. Foley says he's going to return to his ordinary life, yet he's still in a wrestling ring. He said that the next show in Madison Square Garden, which would be, Raw next week, would be his final show before returning back to his home. Foley says his next Raw will be in MSG, and he gave a plug to his book, Tatum Brown. He mentions Dallas, and everyone cheers. He says it was a cheap plug and a cheap pop. Foley said he had to count to 3, but it felt good watching shoving Mr. Sacco down Triple H's throat. Foley says it was in Hell in a Cell that he remembered who he was. Evolution comes out, and Evolution came out to not their usual theme. I honestly don't remember this, but, I guess if they wanted to edit on the network, they would have. But they came out to this generic ass theme. I guess it was, just a little bit of a guitar riff that Jim Johnston wrote up for them just really quick. And it kind of reminded me how, now I don't know how the timeline of songs goes, but you had Kane's theme. Remember Kane's old production theme, the Burned theme? And he got that Finger 11 theme, which had the same guitar riff as his original theme. I don't know if Finger 11 got inspiration from that theme or if that is just the biggest coincidence in the world, but this generic theme seemed to be a like an instrumental version of Line in the Sand by Motorhead, which ended up being Evolution's theme song. So I guess maybe they took inspiration from the Motorhead song and then eventually just paid the rights and got Motorhead's theme song for Evolution. But I don't know what was happening here. But yeah, this theme song was generic as all hell, so I have no idea what was going on. Orton asked Mick Foley if he remembers that he was a loser. Great line. I say that with the most sarcasm in the world. Or that the greatest champ of all time, Triple H, beat Kevin Nash, and that Flair had beaten HBK. Orton says Foley is washed up and is not as handsome or talented as Randy Orton is. Orton is really awkward on the mic. When I say that, is Randy Orton doesn't understand the concept of a mic in this promo. He was really shouting into it, and he would kind of shout and then kind of just go back a little bit, and then say some more words, and then just kind of just go down a little bit. It was really awkward how he would kind of just say different words and then put different emphasis on different words, and he really wasn't getting his point across because he was trying to just say everything in one fell swoop. But it was kind of weird because some of it came out louder than other things, and it was just really, really awkward. I had no idea what was going on with him. They said Evolution was having an opening invitation for a fourth member. So basically what would happen is Evolution would scout out the talent for the entire episode of Raw. Foley says Evolution is just a four horsemen wannabe staple. Foley says Orton is just a kid with all the testosterone in the world and with all the talent in the world, but all Orton can do is lay at home and complain about all his different injuries. And he says until Orton busts his ass, Foley does not respect him. Foley says people like him not because he's a handsome guy with this ripped physique, but because he busted his ass for him. And basically he tore Orton a new asshole in this segment. And I can't do Foley justice, mainly because I'm not going to yell in my house because it's 1 in the morning when I'm recording this. Foley was going off on him and just yelling him. And you just, when a wrestler cuts a good promo and you just kind of feel it a bit, that's what was happening here. Orton grabs the mic and says he doesn't have to sleep in his car, live off of bags of popcorn, and he doesn't need to mutilate his body to be famous. He then proceeds to rip off his shirt and flex and says, who would want to damage a body like this? Obviously, he is learning from Ric Flair, because Ric Flair, whenever someone pisses him off, Ric Flair's first course of action is to rip his shirt off, and that was the first thing Orton did. So I think it is great continuity that Randy Orton is picking pointers up from Ric Flair. It was very, 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 very awesome. Anyway, Randy Orton then proceeds to flex while Triple H, calmly caressed his abs. It looked like it was a mother, rubbing the stomach of her small child after he had gotten a stomach ache from eating too much ice cream. Triple H just very delicately just rubbed Randy Orton's abs. I had no idea what I was watching at this point. Orton says Foley and guys like Foley are extinct. He says he wishes Triple H hadn't retired him so he could beat him. Foley says Orton can still punch him. Orton is hesitant, but he goes for it. He knocks Orton down and beats up Flair and Triple H. Foley goes down for the running knee in the corner. Orton cuts him off and hits an RKO. And there's a 3-on-1 assault on Mick Foley, but Al Snow and Raven come out of nowhere to make the save. And I mean that in two ways. One, they literally showed up out of nowhere. And two, the last people I would expect to make a save for Mick Foley in Evolution is Al Snow and Maven. So there you go. Overall, this was a very good segment. I enjoyed every bit of it. Foley's great on the mic. Orton was awkward. Triple H and Flair did their part. Well, I can't complain about that. I will say this Foley-Orton feud, the seeds were planted here, and obviously, as you all know, next week the feud's really going to kind of start rolling there. I'm glad they didn't blow this off at SummerSlam 2003. It was a slow burn, and we eventually got that hardcore match at Backlash 2004, that epic hardcore match, which I will still say is the best match Randy Orton has ever had. A fantastic match, and I sometimes wish they had just done that match at WrestleMania. I mean, I understand. I mean, WrestleMania 20 was already long as is. Why not add, the 25-minute Intercontinental title match? I do love the Evolution Rock and Sock Connection match, but to me, you build this feud up for, all these months. It's Mick Foley's, kind of farewell match, because then again, he's had a million farewell matches, but still, at this time, that's what it looked like. They could have done this at SummerSlam 2003, but why not, get the slow burn? Because they had to build up Orton as the legend killer. So when he kills the hardcore legend, Mick Foley, it's all the more great when he wins. It puts him over even stronger. I really think, the hardcore match at Backlash, it did put him over big time, and it was an awesome match. And it is good they got it at Backlash, because they could have that 25-30-minute hardcore match, because they needed all that time to show that Randy Orton is one tough son of a bitch. But God, wouldn't it be great if he beat him at WrestleMania 20 in Madison Square Garden? Sure, beating him at Backlash, and where were they? Were they in Edmonton, Alberta, I think? Somewhere like that. I just think that would have been better. I'm not going to sit here and read book Randy Orton from 2003 and on, but I just think, they had a good chance to do it at WrestleMania 20. But then again, I still love the Rock and Sock Connection. Ironically, Mick Foley and Randy Orton are my two least favorite parts about that match. When I say least favorite, I just didn't care about them. What I really cared about was The Rock and Ric Flair. They made that match for me. That was totally awesome. Anyway, so I'm going to continue on. Then we had backstage segment with Bischoff, Moolah, and Mae Young. Bischoff yells at Mae Young because, as you all know, in Bad Blood 2003, there's a redneck triathlon that featured 3 events: a burping contest, a pie eating contest, and a sing-off at first. What happened was, in the burping contest, Stone Cold Steve Austin defeated Eric Bischoff after some hilariously dubbed burps. And then we also had a pie-eating contest, which featured poontang pie, as opposed to the cherry pie and apple pie that Bischoff thought he'd be eating. So what happened was, Bischoff got 5 hot girls and, put them in his office, and he's like, this is the pie we're eating. And Austin's like, well, I get to pick which pie you eat. And Bischoff's like, okay, that's fine. So then they do a little in-ring promo, and Austin says, all right, I selected the pie, hit the music, and of course Mae Young and Moolah's music hits, and Mae Young, she punts Bischoff in the balls and then pulls down her pants, and she has this huge ass thong on and everything, and she gives Bischoff a Bronco Buster. Haha, it's all funny. So Bischoff's all pissed off because he got embarrassed. He yells at Mae Young, calling her a twisted, sick, demented, oversexed, sardine-smelling wrench seahead, which I thought was hilarious. He's all pissed that Mae Young gave her a Bronco Buster. Bischoff says Mae Young will wrestle tonight, but she will not find out who her opponent is until she gets to the ring. Then we had a Gail Kim vignette. What can I say? It was kind of a Matrix ripoff, but then again, that was her whole gimmick. Then we had the Dudley Boyz and Ivory versus Rodney, Mack, Chris Nowinski, and Jazz. There's a big brawl to start out. Bubba press slams Ivory onto Nowinski. Bubba and Mack started off. Bubba fights off Jazz, and Nowinski gets cut off by Mack. The heels get the heat on Bubba. Bubba makes a tag to Ivory. Jazz comes in. Teddy Long distracts the ref for Ivory's pin. Jazz tries to get a cheap shot on Bubba, who gets shoved. Everyone's kind of just running in. I don't really know what's happening at this point. I mean, when I was watching this match, I was just like, what the hell's going on? Because really, I don't think there are any coherent tags. I think Ivory and Jazz were pretty much the legal women for like majority of the second half of this match, like post hot tag. But everyone just kind of ran in and did stuff. Ivory does the was up spot. The Dudleys get a 3D on Nowinski and go for one on Jazz, but get cut off by Rodney Mack. Ivory rolls up Jazz and gets her third straight win over Jazz. And finally, Ivory gets her own music to end the match. I guess because she wasn't teaming with Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus' music didn't play. And I think this would be weird to have the Dudleys' music play, even though she came out with them. I mean, granted, Ivory's music was just this generic, like party music, but it was refreshing to see someone get a win and have their actual music play as opposed to someone else who wasn't involved in the pinfall. Anyway, half a star. This match really wasn't even all that good. It was entertaining for what it was worth, but it was only like 5 minutes long, so who really cares? Then we had a WWE.com poll, who will join Evolution? And the choices were Nash, HBK, Foley, Rock, Jericho, Kane, RVD, Booker T, Goldust, and Test. The results were to come. Then we had a backstage segment with Kane and Rob Van Dam. Now, this is the first of two horrendously acted backstage segments, and I know I've given praise to the backstage segments that were horrendously acted by Stacy Keibler and Test, but I think there's just, both of them are so over-the-top bad that it was good. These were just bad, and like they were so stereotypical. So it's Kane and RVD. RVD wants to strategize against, this was a great running, I don't know if they were doing this on purpose, but RVD called La Resistance, La Resistance, and both RVD and Kane and Stone Cold would go on for the rest of the night calling them La Resistance, which I thought was hilarious. Kane says RVD is the one who screwed up, so he shouldn't be telling him how to, wrestle his match. Kane says RVD should worry about himself. RVD says we're a team. RVD says Kane has changed. Kane says if they don't win, they should split. RVD walks away. Now, that is the rundown of what happened in this segment. So that's your information. Now, I'm going to replay the scene. This is Jericholic8704's acting time. This is literally how Kane and RVD acted. So here's Kane. He's all just stoic, standing there. RVD's like, "Sup, Kane? Rob? All right, Kane, I say we strategize against La Resistance." "Well, let me tell you something, Rob. You're the one that screwed up last night." "Hey, man, we're a team. Isn't that what being a team's all about? There's no I in team." "You've changed, man. You've changed." "I say, if we don't win, we split up." "Is that what you want?" So that was the RVD Kane segment. There was nothing even remotely good about this. This was horrendously bad. I will say I expected more from Kane. RVD had like a classic stoner kind of persona to him. But the thing about Kane was Kane is usually like decent. Like Kane's a good promo. And, he was in See No Evil. And granted, See No Evil isn't that great of a movie. But like Kane does have some sort of acting ability. So for him to be this bad was really stupid. Then we got a highlight package of Bad Blood. Then we got the bad acting backstage segments were back to back. We had one with Mick Foley, Al Snow, and Maven. This was some horrendous acting between Snow and Foley. Maven shows up as hyper as he could be to hit a one-on-one match with Orton. And Mick Foley's like, "Well, you idiot, it's not going to be a one-on-one match because you have Evolution at ringside, so I'm going to walk to the ring with you." Now let me replay this segment. So this is what happened. We had Mick Foley and Al Snow kind of just like laying down backstage as if they were just kind of like two misfits, on the school steps. And Mick Foley was like, "Hey man, you saved my butt out there. I was getting the snot kicked out of me." And Al Snow was like, "Hey man, don't even worry about it. You know what? I'm sick of seeing Evolution come down and beat everybody up." And Mick Foley's like, "Man, I agree. I think you're the best. Thanks a lot, man." And then Maven comes in as giddy as ever. "Hey guys, I got some great news. You know what? I've just been sick of sitting around and not doing anything." And Al Snow says, "Yeah, you should be." And Maven said, "So guess what? I got me a one-on-one match with Randy Orton. And then Mick Foley says, but it's not going to be a one-on-one match because we have Ric Flair at ringside. So you know what? I'm going to go out to the ring with you. And Maven says, gee, thanks, man. That is literally how it went. And it was horrendously bad. It was so awful. Then we had, okay, this was bullshit. Garrison Cade versus Lance Storm. Evolution is watching this match carefully as if Garrison Cade or Lance Storm is going to be in the main event heel stable Evolution. No offense to either guy, and God rest Garrison Cade's soul. I don't mean that in any offense, but let's be real, WWE did not see anything in these two. So Storm makes his way down to the ring, and he's walking as if he has a pole shoved up his ass. Austin walks out with a pillow and a blanket, and he starts yelling, boring, and he says, since he's so boring, that this match will put him to sleep. Austin tells him to show some emotion. Austin is chanting boring throughout this entire match. To counteract Austin's boring chants, Storm and Cade have the most by-the-books match I have ever seen in my entire life, filled with basic holds, basic strikes, and drop kicks, and all that stuff. Austin pretends to fall asleep, wakes up, and then calls Storm the most boring son of a bitch he had ever seen. Now, there is an overuse of the term buried in wrestling. And I feel like if this happened in 2016, people would be quick to say Lance Storm was buried. And I would give them the benefit of the doubt and say, well, no, this is obviously going to lead to a storyline where Lance Storm, finally breaks free of this, non-personality character that he's had for so long, and he's going to find success. Hindsight is 2020, and nothing came of Lance Storm during his WWE career. So I can say, without a shadow of a doubt, that in this segment, Lance Storm was buried. He was made to look like a dumbass. And here's the thing. The camera was so focused on Lance Storm's reaction to being called boring. Like one of the biggest insults a wrestler could ever face. Your matches are so boring it puts people to sleep. This is one of the biggest insults a wrestler could ever receive. So in order to build up Lance Storm's emotional comeback against Stone Cold Steve Austin, the camera does not focus on Lance Storm. Instead, it cuts Jericho and Christian backstage to announce that a tag team match was coming up next. So we had Chris Jericho and Christian versus Goldberg and Booker T. Booker T heads to the ring to kill Christian. Goldberg heads down to beat up both Christian and Chris Jericho, who had been double teaming Booker T. Goldberg press slams Jericho onto Christian, who gets cut open. Jericho does. Then they come back from commercial break. Chris Jericho tags in Christian, who is hesitant to get in the ring with Goldberg. JR notes that Goldberg's shoulder seems to be healed. Now, I will say, the big cornerstone of Jericho and Goldberg's match from Bad Blood 2003 was that Jericho had injured Goldberg's shoulder during the match. Goldberg was no longer selling this, even though he had acted as if the whole thing was separated. I'm going to let it slide, though, because I thought about it, and I was going to tear Goldberg a new one, but then I thought about it more, and I was like, you know what? People get one-day injuries all the time, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Booker tags in and beats up Christian some more. Jericho tags in and gets beat on some more by Booker T and Goldberg. There was a point in this match where Jericho calls for Christian, and I couldn't tell if he either said hey or Jay, and for those of you who don't know, Christian's real name is actually Jason, and he goes by Jay for short. So I didn't know if Chris Jericho was trying to get his attention by accidentally calling him by his real name, or if he was saying hey. I couldn't tell, but I thought it was worth noting. Christian gets a cheap hot shot on Booker for the heat. Evolution is watching from backstage. King says Test is in the leading candidate for the poll. Test, of all people, is in the lead. I think with like 26% of the votes. And knowing the fourth member in hindsight, I love hindsight with these shows. Knowing that the fourth member was someone like Batista, they weren't too far off in picking Test, because Batista and Test, in terms of like character build and look, pretty similar. Goldberg gets the hot tag. Booker gets the hot tag to Goldberg, I should say. Goldberg throws Jericho into Christian, and Christian takes a hard-ass fall from the top rope onto the floor. It was a pretty brutal bump. Christian pulls Jericho out of the way for the spear. Goldberg tags Booker T, who hits a scissors kick on Jericho and a heel kick on an airborne Christian. Jericho tries a bulldog on Booker T. Booker T doesn't really... I don't know if this is miscommunication on either man's part, but Booker T doesn't turn around, so the move looks super awkward. Jericho hits a scoop slam into a line salt, because usually, as we all know, Jericho's signature spot is the bulldog into the line salt. Jericho just uses the scoop slam to get Booker in the center of the ring and does the lion salt. He hits the lion salt, but then turns around and gets speared by Goldberg. Christian tries to belt shot Booker, but misses, and Booker gets a belt shot for the pin. 2.25 stars. It was fine. It was a good match. Nothing too exciting, but it was fine. Then we had highlights of the eating contest, the pie eating contest, I should say, and just more of an excuse to show Mae Young's ass and the Bronco Buster on Bischoff. Bischoff comes out for a promo. He's all pissy. Bischoff says he is the guest ring announcer and introduces Mae Young and Fabulous Moolah. We come back from commercial break to find out that Test is the opponent for Mae Young. Now, let me explain something about this match, and it's going to show how it's a problem with WWE today, but it's good to know that it was even happening in 2003, which some fans consider a great year in WWE. Bischoff brings out Test to be Mae Young's opponent. Stone Cold shows up on the Tron and says he will make a few changes to the match, considering their co-GMs. Austin says there will be a special referee, and the special referee is Scott Steiner. So Scott Steiner's, his siren goes off, his theme song's playing, JR is all happy because finally the match is fair, because we have a fair special guest referee. Now here's the dumb part. So let me paint this picture for you. Here's what you got. You got Moolah at ringside, Bischoff at ringside, then you have Test and Mae Young in the ring. So Austin does not even come out to the ring. He just shows up on the Tron. So he doesn't really try to take any sort of physical action against this huge injustice of this huge, buff, young dude taking on this 80-year-old elderly woman. Then we have Scott Steiner and Stacy come out. And Scott Steiner, who had just won Stacy's managerial services, he's showing her off. Stacy's wearing, Stacy's half naked. She's kind of twirling around. And they're showboating and everything. So Test says, okay, fuck this. They're loading and they're messing around on the stage. Test just grabs Mae Young and gives her a pump handle slam. And what was the best part of this? What was hilarious? And maybe it's not that funny, but it's funny to me just because of the way it looked. It's a hard camera shot of this pump handle slam, and you could see Bischoff in the bottom of the screen. And as soon as Test hits the pump handle slam, Bischoff's just like, yeah! He just jumps in the air and raises both of his arms. It was really funny for some reason. I don't know why I found this so funny. Maybe it's just the concept of Bischoff cheering the abuse of an older woman who had given him a Bronco Buster. Maybe I just found that funny. So now that Steiner sees, oh shit just got real, he runs over to get Mae Young, and then Test sneaks out of the ring with Bischoff, and Bischoff raises his arm. Steiner, Stacy, and Austin looked like complete dipshits in this entire segment. If Austin really wanted to go against this match that Bischoff made, why didn't he just come down and beat the shit out of Test himself? So Steiner realizes this guy can just beat him up in an instant. Why isn't he running down to the ring to beat the shit out of Test? Instead, he wants to show off his new girlfriend, and then all of a sudden, there's an 80-year-old woman who just got pump handle slammed. Don't you hate it when that happens? So they all look like an idiot. Speaking of idiots, we had a backstage segment with the new and improved Rico. Rico asked Miss Jackie Gata to get his brush, moisturizer, and sparkle glitter. Rico's transformation is complete. He turns around, he's got his face all painted up, and he says, "It's raining Rico." Then we had a backstage segment. Austin says to one of the, TV agents he wants RVD and Kane in his office. Then we had Rico versus Spike Dudley. Rico comes out to generic club music. Spike does some head scissor takeovers. He eventually gets hot-shotted for the heat. King was taking notice of the puppies at ringside. Jackie lays on the ropes for a bit and distracts Spike. Rico hits a big heel kick for the win. JR says they are quite the pair, and King and I both agree. So that's a star. Nothing special here. Got Rico over, I guess. Not really, but whatever. We have a backstage segment with Austin, Kane, and RVD. Stone Cold says that the team has been sucking, and they even lost to La Resistance. He's like, you even lost to La Resistance. I think that's hilarious. I don't know why. Because you're going to go as far as, you might as well just call them the Resistance, because that's what it means. So, La Resistance. I think that's just very funny. Austin says he wants them to win the title not for themselves, not for him, but for the goddamn United States of America. Then we had Orton versus Maven. The battle of generic music has commenced, and I have to say, Maven wins. Both kind of go back and forth for a bit, exchanging holds and shit. JR says Orton is a cornerstone of the future, and this was a great line. This was a hilariously great line in hindsight. JR says, this Randy Orton, great physique, wonderful talent, cornerstone of the future, but he needs an attitude adjustment. If only JR had known how much weight that sentence would have had, and how many fucking matches we would have to see Orton take an attitude adjustment in. That made me laugh very hard. Orton pretty much dominates with a suplex and the hung DDT. Orton then puts on the longest headlock I think I've ever seen in my life. I swear to God, like, I was just watching them. It was obviously a rest hold, but I guess both of them were still super green and needed, like, 6 years to rest, because I swear to God, this headlock never ended. And the thing about Orton, and he's gotten better at this, but again, this is a young Randy Orton and a young Maven. I'm not going to fault them too much. I'm just going to make fun of them on YouTube. I mean, that's the least I could do. They didn't like do anything like cinch it in further. They didn't like make any facial expressions, and they didn't like do anything like the the wincing and the and then something's hurting them. They didn't do any of that. They literally just sat there for like 7 years with this headlock on, and it was killing me. So then Maven gets a comeback with a DDT and a bunch of clotheslines. Flair trips Maven on the top rope. Foley goes after Flair. Orton turns his back for like literally 1 minute. He was literally just watching Flair and Foley go at it. And like literally it took him forever to turn around while Maven was perched up on the top rope. Maven hits a super high crossbody. Orton kicks out. Orton hits a RKO for the win. Star and 3/4, whatever. It was an average match. It was fine. It's just both of these guys were kind of, inexperienced, so it really wasn't as good as it could have been. Foley gets Sacco on both of them. Flair gets all pissed, and as Randy Orton did earlier in the show, this is foreshadowing, Flair got pissed because someone had gotten under his skin, therefore he ripped his clothes off. And we had the WWE.com poll results. The winner was Test with 26% of the votes. Not far off, again, from Batista, who's very similar to Test in terms of appearance. Second place was Kane, which makes sense because they were doing this whole, what's going on with Kane thing. And third was Jericho. Then we had our main event, La Resistance versus Kane and Rob Van Dam. Kane and RVD dominate in the beginning. Kane compares Rob Van Dam to Crush from Finding Nemo, which I found hilarious. Side note, for those of you, I saw Finding Dory today, and, today's Friday. Well, technically not, because it's 1:22 in the morning, so it's Saturday. So technically I saw it yesterday, but who gives a flying fuck? Finding Dory was a very good movie. I wholeheartedly recommend it. I actually preferred it more than Finding Nemo, if I'm being totally honest. Maybe that's just my initial thought. Maybe I have to watch both of them back to back to finally, get a solid opinion on it. But for those of you who haven't seen Finding Nemo, Crush is basically the stoner of the movie, so it makes sense. La Resistance gets the heat on Rob Van Dam. I swear there was a point where I saw a bird fly through the arena. They had like a chin lock on Rob Van Dam, and they were doing different camera shots, and I swear I saw a bird fly through the arena. I don't know why I noticed that, and it was like the tiniest speck on the screen, but I swear there was a bird in that arena. JR and King and I were so bored during this match that we all just did different things. King and JR talked about prejudice while I compared Raw themes. I was trying to figure out which Raw theme I liked better. The Across the Nation theme, which played during, this time, 2002 to 2005. And then I really enjoy the 2007-2009 theme, that To Be Loved by Papa Roach. I am a Papa Roach fan. I think it's a good band. And like as a song, I prefer it over the Across the Nation, but I was trying to figure out which song fit better for a Raw intro and like what went better with the opening cinematic. I still haven't decided yet. I'm leaning more towards To Be Loved because I just like the lyrics in that song better, and I love the opening video package, but I have to compare it some more. Across the Nation is more nostalgic for me because I started watching wrestling in like 0203, which is, when Raw was when Raw had that theme, so, that brings back so many memories to me when I first started watching wrestling. And when you first start watching wrestling as a kid, it's one hell of an experience. The more you get, the more you got to focus on it, the more you got to pay attention to it, and the less you can have fun with it. So, that was really nostalgic for me. But, 2007, 2009 is when I got a little older, and that's when I started looking at wrestling with a more critical eye. It was still, a fun time for both themes. But, I'm getting really off topic here. That's how boring this match was. I'm just getting off topic. RVD goes in for the hot tag to Kane. They hit a bunch of double team moves. Dupree sneaks in and hits a Death Valley driver on Rob Van Dam. Yes, you heard that correctly. Kane hits a diving clothesline on him. La Resistance tried to rip off Kane's mask, and then they hit the finisher on him on the outside. RVD tries to fight off both of them, but gets cut off. Dupree shoves Rob Van Dam off the top onto Kane, and then after this, Kane just goes ballistic. He slams Sylvain into the steps. He gets a chair and hits Dupree right in the face for the DQ. He chokeslams both of them. Sylvain tries to get away through the crowd. Kane reaches in and grabs him, and he's beating the shit out of him. Triple H's music hits. Triple H says he knows they haven't gotten along, but he wants them to hear him out. Triple H carefully gets into the ring, and he says, "I'm glad to see the old Kane's back." That's an awesome display of power he just showed. He says if he says yes to his offer to be a part of Evolution, things can be a lot better for Kane. He can have all the luxuries in life, like fast cars, faster women, big cities, etc. Austin's music hits. He says it's all bullshit since Kane is a threat to Triple H's World Heavyweight title, so of course he wants him on his side. Austin says you can either join Evolution or you can have a World Heavyweight Championship match in the main event of Raw next week at Madison Square Garden. Bischoff comes out and says he can change matches too, like Austin did to him earlier that day. Bischoff says he can have the match with Triple H, but if he loses, Kane will unmask. Kane grabs both Austin and Triple H, but eventually chokeslams Triple H, and that was the end of Raw. So I would say a good main event angle. The match between La Resistance and Kane wasn't even all that good. And the opening promo was very good, but in between, you had absolutely nothing. I mean, you had an okay tag match with Jericho and Christian versus Booker T and Goldberg, but other than that, what else did you have on this show? Really, you didn't have anything. The show was kind of boring. At times I found myself checking my phone a lot just to get something to do when I wasn't really taking notes. So overall, this Raw was not very good at all. I really wouldn't recommend it at all. Even the good segments aren't really worth seeing. The only thing I would actually recommend are the really horrendously bad acting segments, because they might be great material for an acting course on how to teach people not to act. So other than that, I will see all of you later. I've had too long of a conversation with you all, so I will see you all next week. Goodbye.